Call this Altoona City Council meeting to order Monday, July 10th at 6 p.m. We'll now have a moment of silent prayer. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic about which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I feel like I'm in a different zip code than you guys.
Linda, would you take the roll call, please?
Councilman Beatty.
Here.
Councilman Butterbaugh is absent. Councilman Carper is absent. Councilman Ellis.
Here.
Councilman Ickes.
Here.
Councilman Kelly.
Here.
Mayor Pacifico.
Here. Before we get into the presentation, Councilman Ellis has something that he would like to read.
Yes. As a result of some of the events over the last weekend, the mayor asked me to put together sort of a review of what's occurred with the Brush Run stream in the valley. The issues along Brush Run have been surfacing for years. There are multiple factors resulting in a massive increase in the amount of stormwater flowing or flooding Brush Run between Lloyd Street and the new 17th Street. Some identified factors include an increase in stormwater from the east end, the increase of stormwater from I-99 along 10th Street and 12th Street. The Brush Run water flooding has caused massive damage in the east end to 17th Street, particularly between 10th Street and 15th Street. The city recently replaced damaged pipes under Kettle Street at Hudson Avenue and contracted slip lining under Pleasant Valley Boulevard at 2nd Street. A few years ago, the underground Brush Run caused a yard to cave in on Caroline Avenue alley near Lloyd Street. Following the June 10th, 2021 flooding along Brush Run between 10th Street and 17th Street, city staff began researching solutions to the increasing flooding issues along Brush Run. Working with an engineering firm, an option was presented. This option would result in removing 19 structures, then creating a meandering stream between Pleasant Valley and Valley View Boulevards. The estimated cost is $54 million and would take up to 7 years to obtain the proper permitting. In the spring of 2022, City Council and city staff took a bus tour of the city that included stops along Brush Run at Lloyd Street, 2nd Street, 10th Street, and 12th Street. Over the past year, multiple discussions have taken place between City Council and city staff looking at viable options to mitigate flooding along Brush Run and to save the neighbors being victimized by the flooding. Those options include a retaining pond near 2nd Street and Caroline Avenue, significant property acquisition to build rain gardens along Brush Run through the valley. The costs of these projects all exceed the amount doable in the ARPA budget. City Council has inquired with the Army Corps of Engineers, city staff has inquired with the Army Corps of Engineers as to whether property owners could have the option to be bought out because of the flooding situation. During a conversation with Senator Ward last week, she offered her assistance and the assistance of her staff to work through these issues. Saturday, I spoke with the Governor's Secretary of Legislative Affairs, requesting a meeting with leadership of DEP to discuss the city's options within law and to search for funding to resolve the flooding issues along Brush Run. We are committed to a solution and resolution for the property owners in these areas. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. All right, we have a presentation on the agenda this evening. Joining us from CZB is Pete Lombardi and Matt Ingalls to give us a comprehensive plan update.
Mayor, thanks everyone for inviting us to be part of this meeting tonight.
Oh, yeah.
What I'll do is provide a brief overview of the project and just an update on where we are at this stage in the project. Can you mute the microphone? Okay. So this is a project that began back in May when we had our kickoff meeting with our steering committee and an initial tour of the city with staff. Since then, the project has received a name and an identity, this Altogether Altoona identity. There's now a website, altogetheraltoona.org, and I'll have an update in just a few minutes in terms of how that website fits into a current round of public engagement this week here in Altoona. So this is a project, again, it started in May. The goal is to conclude with a final draft plan by April of 2024. We're in the midst of the first phase of the project, data collection, data analysis. A lot of that will be wrapping up at the end of this month. But this is also a month where we begin this second significant phase of public engagement with some activities this week. And as you can see from this timeline, it proceeds into a third phase, development of the plan by the end of this year. So the community engagement work behind this project, the first new comprehensive plan for Altoona since the 2013 Positively Altoona plan, involves a steering committee. We had our second meeting with them this morning. We have a series of open house roadshows planned for this project. We had one just this afternoon in Juniata, and we have two tomorrow. The steering committee is involved in a process called kitchen table conversations, where they'll be taking some conversation, the material that we prepared for them into the community, arranging small group conversations. So that's another leg of community engagement. And then the Altogether Altoona website now has an online survey that's live as of today that mirrors a lot of the content from the open houses this week, as well as a lot of the questions we've been discussing with the steering committee. The open houses, again, in addition to the one that was this afternoon at the Juniata Civic Association, there's one at noon tomorrow to 1:30 at the high school, and then from 5:30 to 7 at the Trolley Works Business Park. And these are both of all of these are events where people can come and go as they please. There are some interactive and informational posters, and there's also a lot of consultants, myself, Matt Ingalls, my colleague, and staff there to talk to people and answer questions about the project. The online survey now up at altogetheraltoona.org, and we would encourage you to communicate this website to constituents and encourage them to participate. The online survey there is open through August 4th. And again, a lot of the questions in that survey mirror discussions we've been having to date with the steering committee. Just to give you a flavor for some of the discussions we've been having and that are part of the open houses this week, one question we posed to the steering committee at the beginning of this process was we presented them with this little sine curve here to get a sense of where they think Altoona what sort of trajectory they think Altoona is on. And this is sort of an early question we pose in a lot of communities we work in to get a sense of whether there's a prevailing sense that a community is on the rise, whether it's kind of stagnant, whether it's declining, whether it's rebounding after bottoming out. And as you can see, the results on this is the result from the exercise with the steering committee, where you kind of have a smattering of responses. A lot of folks think that the city is rebounding. Other folks aren't quite so sure. There was a similar smattering of responses at our first open house in Juniata Civic Association this afternoon. So this is kind of a question we were asking early on to get a sense of what direction people think Altoona is going and how the comprehensive plan should respond to that sense of direction. We're also in the midst right now of putting together a preliminary list of what we're calling big things. For comprehensive plans, we believe that a really important part of any comprehensive planning process is to develop a fine-tuned list of utmost priorities for a community, so that you're not working with a plan that has a list of 15 or 20 things to tackle that you might only have resources, serious resources, to commit towards, maybe a half dozen or fewer items. So early in this process, we're working to develop a list of utmost priorities that will be honed and refined and then be sort of a foundation for the plan as it reaches the development phase. These slides right here will give you a sense of some of the items that have been added to the list so far. Downtown Altoona has been brought up as a continuing priority. The safety of city streets to all users has come up. Basic infrastructure, sort of getting the basics right in Altoona infrastructure-wise, has come up. Blight has been a prominent part of the discussion. Sort of a few other items on the list so far. The need to be able to adapt to upcoming technological change that is predictable at this point. Boosting Altoona's ability to both attract and retain skilled workers going forward, what is involved with that sort of outcome. Boosting access to parks and trails as part of quality of life upgrades, and then housing opportunities at a variety of levels, thinking about types of housing, price points, sort of housing in general, which is closely tied to the blight issue, I think, in the discussion of big things. That has come up so far in many of our discussions. So this is a list that we're looking to get public impact on this at our open houses, through that online survey. Folks might think that there are some other things that aren't being presented so far in discussions, and we'll be looking for folks to let us know if there are things missing from the discussion so far. The kitchen table conversations that the steering committee will be engaging the community in, forming small group discussions of 10 or 15 folks, gathering them for 60 to 90 minutes to talk about some serious issues here. This first conversation that we've tasked them with includes both a discussion of big things with the little groups that they assemble, as well as beginning to talk about Altoona's core values. Part of this project is identifying what those core values are, what are the planning principles that reflect those core values, and then using those values and principles as a decision-making framework for the plan, so that the city can use the plan even when the unpredictable occurs in 5 or 10 years. Things might happen, things will happen that you can't anticipate right now. The decision-making framework is a way of making the plan useful even in those cases. One last thing that I'll mention before I review some of the next steps for this process. Right now, we have a group of surveyors, Altoona residents that we've hired to do a complete field survey of residential property conditions in the city of Altoona. We have 16,500 residential properties, single-family homes, duplexes, small apartment buildings, big apartment buildings. We're putting eyes on every single property in the city through a windshield survey process to get a sense of conditions in the housing stock across the city. This map right here on this slide, I just grabbed this morning to give you a sense of an example of an actual neighborhood in Altoona that has been covered so far through this project. The green you see on this map represents properties that are in excellent or good condition. Yellow properties are in average condition. They're not showing signs of blight. They're not showing necessarily signs of visible pride. And then you have orange and reds on this map that reflect properties that show visible signs of deferred maintenance and trouble. So this is, again, a process that we're doing citywide, and it will give us a really good sense of the granularity of housing conditions on a block-by-block basis, and we'll be adding it to a wide range of other data sets that the city staff have given to us, so that we have a really good understanding, especially of housing and blight dynamics and how those filter into a variety of issues that have come up in the process so far. So the next steps for this project will be refining that list of Altoona's big things, especially after the open houses this week, after the online survey closes in early August. We'll also be working with similar inputs to nail down the set of core values that will be part of the plan's decision-making framework. We'll be wrapping up data collection this month and beginning the assemblage of key findings that we'll have presentable by Labor Day to present to the council and others in the community. And then we'll begin that gradual pivot to strategy development in September once we have a good understanding and sort of a kind of validation from all the stakeholders that the big things that we're looking at, the findings that we're interpreting, that they seem like they're right, that the right priorities have been identified, so that we can begin identifying what you do about them. What are some implementation strategies that are realistic and that give clear guidance for the city council, for city staff, and for all of the city's partners. So with that, I'll be happy to take any questions that anyone has about the process or anything that I've just talked about.
I believe your idea with the survey is excellent as far as getting eyes on every house and rating them, as to good condition, needs work. And I think getting an eye on every property is going to be extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've found we've used it in several comprehensive plans. Erie, Pennsylvania was one we did a few years ago where we did a complete survey, and it really does it's useful for the comprehensive plan, and then it's information that's conveyed to city staff and is useful in all sorts of other efforts within City Hall.
I think that'll be invaluable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Pete and Matt, for being here this evening and for all the
Right.
work that you're doing.
All right, thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll open the floor for public comment. If anyone would like to address council, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to under 5 minutes.
Hi, my name's Pam Holland. I live at 811 North 8th Street, Juniata, and I am a part of Altoona, though sometimes I think people forget that Juniata is. I also am flooded constantly. I've lived there since 1992, and in the past couple years, ever since they started digging around at Strawberry Hills and the rainwater comes down, I get flooded both ways across my property. So I can't get in and out of my property. This July 1st was the worst it's ever been. I called your office, Mayor. I've got no response. I called the city, highway garage. No one responded either. I called Logan Township. They did at least call me back. But the city has been down. They were down in the winter and said that they would look into it in the spring when they can get around to it. Well, spring has came and gone. They came down and dug a tire out, but they said that's about they can do. I have a big hole at the end of the road with a horse over it that now has weeds growing over the horse because it's been sitting there so long. And I can't get any response from the highway garage. Now, I get what you're trying to do everywhere else, but like it or not, I pay quite a bit in taxes, and I kept my property up. I also maintain the road that is supposed to go beside my property. For 30-some years, we've taken care of that. But my property value has gone down quite a bit due to this flooding and the fact that the rest of Juniata is left to go to hell. There are weeds everywhere, which no one seems to come down there and look at the code or anything and check that all out. That you go for a walk, you can't walk on the sidewalks because the weeds are so high. And I'd like someone to address our problem with flooding besides everyone else's with flooding. So I'd like somebody to do something. I get tired of the city saying they'll get back to us, or they can't do that. But the road is caving in, and I only have one way into my property. I don't have another way in or another way out. And the highway garage is never in on the weekends when anyone has a problem. And if you call when they're supposed to be open, it always goes to an answer machine and they don't call you back.
That's been one of the issues that I've wanted to address, is that you create a ticket system when you have a complaint so that it can be followed. And as of this date, that hasn't been done. But I think that's one thing the city needs to do.
Well, this is going on with us down there since I moved in 92. The road to my house is shell, and it's only a partial road, so they only have to shovel or plow up to my driveway. And the first years, we got plowed in, they never came down. I had to come to a meeting then and have a fit. Then finally, all these snow plows showed up down there having fits because I went and complained about them. So now, usually every year, depending on if they put a new person on, I either have to flag them down or eventually someone will realize that, yes, there's a house back there. And so they'll come and they'll plow that there. Now I notice that they're plowing and paving all the alleys in Juniata, but they can't pave my little bit that is only halfway up to my place. But they're paving alleys, but they can't take care of this road that's caving in. The runoff from the road goes underneath, and the water department that put a roadway back in to dump dirt and that on another property, which built that back up. So now when the water comes down, it hits that and backs up, and so it comes across my driveway completely. My husband, thank God, has a truck, or I wouldn't have been able to get out to work a couple times because it is so deep and it's all muddy. And I called WTAJ too, which no, they couldn't come down and take any pictures, but I took a ton of pictures out in the rain holding my umbrella with water up to my knees. It has never been as bad as it is. And the water, the runoff is so muddy, it's disgusting. And the more that the township decides they'll do up at Strawberry Hill, the worse it's gonna get. And I've had them down there and they claim they have these ponds up there to maintain the water. Well, the water totally avoids the ponds. When we lived there at first, the little creek you could walk across. Now it's like a raging river, and all the trees are falling over because it has ate out their roots, so the trees fall onto my property. But nobody seems to want to do anything about it because we're the only ones that live there. But I do pay taxes, and I do maintain my house. And I don't know how much longer I'm going to want to pay my taxes that I'm paying based on my property value when everything around there is making my property value go down. The weeds, the blight, the trucks, the flooding, it's not fair to people either to pay taxes based on that when you let everywhere else in the city go, because it's used to be a nice place to live down there, but anymore it's pretty bad. So I'd like somebody to get back to me or someone to talk to the highway garage. If I have to have 50 snowplows sitting in my driveway because they're mad because I complained, I don't care. I think they need to learn to do their job, and they need to let you know what the status is. We were put off till spring. Spring came and went. I still know nothing. I called, left a message, no one calls me back.
Ma'am, I assure you someone will be in touch with you, and actually I will myself be down there later in the week.
I sent your secretary videos of previous flooding.
This was
She
worse.
showed you those pictures.
Yeah.
And this was
I
worse.
wanted to make sure you
Yeah,
know what
I
we're
did.
going
I mean,
aware of
this
this,
is
yeah.
worse. I had statues in my yard up this high, and as I went out, finally the little head disappeared. That's how high the water is. And it's not clear water, it's muddy water. Like and tires wash down, and it's disgusting, it is.
Matter of fact,
Thank
the
you.
tires walked in the pipe again.
Okay.
I mean, and we used to try to maintain it when it was a little creek, but it now is so big, and I am not getting down in there to try to dig out stuff that isn't my garbage that's coming down from who knows where. So I'd appreciate if someone could get back to us and let us know the status.
Yeah.
Thank you
I
very
was
much.
told that was gonna be put on some kind of thing to be looked at. But then the last time I talked to the city, they said it would have to be contracted out because they go underneath the sewer line.
Yeah. Whenever you did call my office, I did drive down and look at that, and I did speak with Public Works, and I thought they were going to get back to you, but I'll find out tomorrow what's
They
going
come
on.
down
And
and put the horse there, and yeah, that was months ago. Well, that's when I sent in the picture.
Yeah, but
Okay.
I called after July 1st. I called it was probably the 3rd, when I figured they would be in, I don't know. But I left a message and no one got back to me after that.
okay.
We'll make sure someone takes care of this, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more public comment.
My name's Joseph Novak. I live at 226 North 8th Avenue in Juniata, and my comments on one of the big things at the presentation, what was that? And safety on the streets of North 3rd Street. Cars, trucks fly up that road, motorcycles. And I noticed there's a speed limit meter on 2nd Street in Juniata there, right up between 8th and 9th Avenues, that shows you how fast you're going. And there are a lot of kids play on 3rd Street. There's a lot of kids coming from the playground up at Juniata Elementary. And It's amazing. I lived there 15 years. It's amazing someone hasn't been killed, a child hasn't been killed on that intersection at least. And there's no marked speed limit signs on that street, and it's a snow emergency route. And I noticed on Broadway, a year or two ago, they painted 25-mile-per-hour on the road, and I don't know if that's done any good, but it makes you notice. I know when I drive down Broadway, it's big and wide as it is, and it kind of reminds you. So I just want to warn that a disaster's in the making there, and it's a wonder that no child has been killed or seriously injured at that on that street, especially around 8th Avenue. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just comment on what he's saying about the traffic and that down there? I come
Yeah, you can
straight
have
up
2
8th.
minutes.
Okay, I come straight up 8th, and 5th is when the railroad lets out, crazy, because they are all driving up that one to get the light, like maniacs there. And now that PennDOT put a turning lane in on 8th to turn that way, when you're coming this way, I don't know how many times I've almost got hit because those people go turn right on red. They don't look to see that we're coming this way. They're all going right on red. I had a guy road rage me because I laid on my horn because I had the green light and he thinks he can go. But the railroad letting out and they come down that road, they fly down that road because they're trying to get that light. And it's bad there, it is. And there's no stop signs. And we've had the police down there before for accidents there, and their excuse is everyone in Juniata parks that way. Well, they shouldn't be parking that close to the stop signs that the other people can't see to get in and out, and no one seems to want to do anything about that either.
All right, if there's no more public comment, we will close the floor and go into the resolutions.
Item A is approving the minutes of the Altoona City Council meeting held Monday, June 12, 2023. Item B is rejecting the bids for the Juniata Memorial Spray Park flood protection improvements and returning the submitted bid security, as the bids were not in the best interest of the city. Item C is authorizing a lease agreement with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Transportation for the use of their right-of-way of State Route 4009 to 11, identified on the plan for the expansion of the Booker T. Washington parking lot, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item D is approving a communications right-of-way license agreement between the city and DQE Communications related to construction, installation, maintenance, and operation of facilities within the public rights-of-way for the purposes of providing telecommunication services and/or information services as defined in the agreement, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item E is approving the submission of a multimodal transportation fund grant application from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Financing Authority for the Juniata Gap Lighting Project in the amount of $836,924, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and the city clerk to attest to same. Item F is approving a contract for police services with the Altoona Housing Authority for the period of July 1, 2023 through June 30th, 2024 at the Green Avenue Towers and the 11th Street Towers, and further authorizing the city manager to execute all documents and for the city clerk to attest to same. Item G is approving a repository bid in the amount of $500 submitted by Donna Sabalis of 1815 8th Avenue for property located at 710 19th Street, Altoona, with the following conditions: simultaneous acceptance of the repository bid at 1817 to 19 8th Avenue, execution and recording by the city of a release of municipal lien, execution and recording of the city of another release of municipal lien at the Blair County docket 2011-420. The docket prior was 2008-9853. and further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Item H is approving a repository bid in the amount of $500 submitted by Donna Sabalas of 1815 8th Avenue for property located at 1817 to 19 8th Avenue with the following conditions. Number one, simultaneous acceptance of the repository bid for 710 19th Street. Number two, execution and recording by the city of a release of municipal lien at Blair County Docket 2008-9853. Number three, execution and recording by the city of a release of municipal lien at Blair County Docket 2011-420. And further authorizing the city manager to execute the taxing district form. Are there any deletions or anything that needs to be pulled for a separate vote?
Is there something that we have to do with H?
G and H.
G and H? Okay, are we tabling them or what?
At a minimum, I would table them.
Okay.
A motion to table?
Make a motion to table G and H.
Okay. We have a motion from Councilman Ellis. Is there a second?
I'll second.
And I'll call a vote for the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that's G and H. Now I'll call for the consent vote on the remaining items excluding items G and H. Councilman Beatty?
Yes.
Councilman Butterball is absent. Councilman Carper is absent. Councilman Ellis?
Yes.
Councilman Ickes?
Yes.
Councilman Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico?
Yes.
And the vote passes 5-0. We have two ordinances on the agenda for introduction. The first one is an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which authorizes the vacation and abandonment of 7.5 feet of an unnamed and unopened alley on the south side of North 20th Street between North 7th Avenue and North 7.5 Avenue, and 25 feet of unopened North 7.5 Avenue pursuant to Chapter 295-8 of the Altoona City Code, and further authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to execute a quitclaim deed to William C. Mallory and Kimberly R. Mallory and any accompanying documentation to relinquish any right, title, and/or interest the city of Altoona has or may have in said unopened roadways, provide severability of provisions, repealer, and provide an effective date. Is there a council member willing to introduce this ordinance? Okay.
I'll
I-
second.
Okay, this ordinance was moved to be tabled by Councilman Ellis, seconded by Mayor Pacifico. Hold on 1 second, I need a sheet. Call for the vote. This is a motion to table. Councilman Beatty?
Yes.
Councilman Butterball is absent. Councilman Carper is absent. Councilman Ellis?
Yes.
Councilman Ickes?
Yes.
Councilman Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Pacifico?
Yes.
And the vote to table passes 5-0. We have a second ordinance on the agenda, which is an ordinance of the City of Altoona, Blair County, Pennsylvania, which amends Chapter 690 Utilities of the Altoona City Code to provide updated definitions, procedures, standards, and fees with respect to the placement and installation of assets and facilities with any site of Altoona rights of way, to provide a repealer, savings clause, and an effective date. Is there a council member willing to introduce this ordinance?
So moved.
This ordinance was introduced by Mayor Pacifico.
I'll second.
We don't need a second till,
No.
it'll come back in August.
Okay.
Okay, city manager updates.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Just a few items to talk about here. All of them relate to directly or indirectly to city finances. First item is that the auditing process is complete. The city auditor will present the audited financial statements to council. Looks like we're shooting for the August 14th meeting. The second item I have is related to the budgeting process, which is about to kick off in high gear here soon. I am working as an aside, but related to the budget, on a 5-year financial projection for the years 2024 through 2028, that I would like to start off our discussions in, I guess, September, with kind of an overview of where that is for everybody, just to know before we go into an actual discussion of the 2024 budget. And then, last but certainly not least, the city's finance director, Bessie Mosey, who's unable to be here this evening, is retiring. And just like to thank Bessie in her absence for the 46 years of service that she put into the city. And, you know, she's been the cornerstone of the city's finance department for a very long time. And I just want to, in absentia, I guess, but congratulate her and thank her for her service. That's all I have.
Thank you, Omar. Council discussion items. Councilman Kelly.
Well, yeah, question, Omar, on the 5-year projections. Do you anticipate that being, and maybe I missed it if you said it, I apologize. But, will you have that before we're through the budgeting process, or?
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
what I'd like to do, and I mean, it's a lot of work, so, and we'll see if I can align my desire with the actual end result, but, you know, you're gonna look at the 2024 budget. I'd like to, at the same time, present you with really what not only 2024 is gonna look like, but also, you know, projections for the out years of that 5-year, period. So you have a better sense of, you know, the financial, situation of the city.
Well, yeah, it'd be good to have that kind of a roadmap so we know, have a, you know, expectation of what costs are going to be, so we can do a little more forward thinking, a
Right.
little more planning on that, so.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Mayor, are you gonna mention anything about? No? Okay,
I think it's not public yet.
okay. That's all I have then.
Okay. Councilman Ickes.
Thank you, Mayor. Omar, looking forward to the budget discussions not only for this year, but looking forward to the next 5. Other than that, I have nothing for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Ellis.
Yes, I have a plan that I'd like council to consider that would involve committees to help process properties for housing rehab for one committee, and another committee that would deal with vacant lot reuse. And I'm not married to any of this process, but I'd like to have my colleagues at least start considering how something like this would look. But, you know, my idea would be have each member of council appoint someone to one of these 2 committees. The mayor would be a member of the committee. So essentially, there'd be 2 boards, one to deal with houses, one to deal with lots, and they would come up with a process for how the city would accept donated properties, how the city would try to get some of these dilapidated properties into the hands more effectively and efficiently into the hands of contractors that want to redo them. And they could take a 25,000, the other group could take a 25,000 foot look at how we can start putting these land bank properties together and maybe get them out for development. So I'd ask my colleagues to give some consideration to that and have some dialogue to best how we accomplish that.
Yeah, I'm okay having that conversation, but I kind of feel like that's sort of what the RA is already tasked to do, so I don't know if we need a committee for the committee, you know what I mean?
We can discuss that.
We can discuss, yeah.
Thank you, that's all.
Councilman Beatty.
Now, I'd like to thank Betsy Mosey for her service. She's been here, you know, through the years and been very dependable And from what I've heard, she's just done an outstanding job. And I also want to thank the people that came tonight to share their concerns, because as council, we don't always get the information directly presented to us. And like I said, I've been advocating for a system where when there's a complaint filed in the city, that there's a ticket created. The city has 24 hours to respond. If it doesn't respond at 48 hours, it goes to city manager. At 72 hours or somewhere in that number, it comes to council, so that we have a direct path. There's only one way that you're going to fix a customer service deficiency, and that's by getting people to be aware of it. And that's the one thing that council is somewhat insulated from, and I think it'd be a good idea to fix that. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the media, Bill?
Where's this thing go? Oh. Do I need to leave it here? Oh, sorry. Okay. Oh, right, so Jesse, okay, got it. Let's see, why did the city reject the spray park bids?
Guess they were too high.
Okay. Is it gonna be rebid?
Not sure.
Nate's on vacation, so until he gets back, we won't know.
Okay, the Booker T. Washington, resolution, does that relate to the parking lot expansion? Does that relate to the basketball courts or the community center?
The community center, Bill?
Oh, okay.
It's the area between the building and the retaining wall that goes to Union
okay.
Avenue.
And that's a PennDOT property, actually?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The right of way above the retaining wall is PennDOT property.
Right.
That's what we'd like to capture for the parking lot.
Okay. Would anybody care to comment on the police services deal with the Altoona Housing Authority for the towers? I mean, you've already told.
Yeah, I was going to say this is what you did the
Yeah,
article.
yeah,
on.
I know. I just wondered if council wanted to say anything about it.
I think it's going to be effective. They've had trouble getting private security to do the work, and as long as the police department has the manpower for it, I think it's a good use. And I just hope the $50 was enough to cover the cost, because it seems a little sparse in the hourly rate. But
Okay. Why table the resolutions G and H? The, what are they called, repository resolutions?
There's the way the repository bids were submitted, they were contingent upon filing of release of liens, and one of them is a demolition lien over a certain amount, which theoretically can create potential legal obligations for the city. So the city just wanted to fully explore and look into that before having council issue a final decision on that.
And what is the significance of ordinance number 2 regarding the placement of facilities and assets in the right of way?
What that is, Bill, is by way of history, that section of the code, the last time it was amended was 50 years ago.
50?
50.
Okay.
Or I should say almost 50. And it basically needed updated. There's been a lot of changes over that period of time. When that thing was drafted, there were certain utilities that are now regulated by the PUC that we don't necessarily regulate anymore. And obviously, there's been a significant change with technology and telecommunications, things of that nature. So it was really necessary to go over, basically re-examine that whole chapter, and you know, we worked with the Public Works Department and, you know, looked at what other cities and our municipalities are doing with these types of things, to basically update it and to make it something that was appropriate for 2023.
So that would include like stringing wires along
Correct.
the right away?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. And why table ordinance number 1?
I had some concerns, Bill, with some interaction that the city's having with those people, so we need to explore that a little bit more.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Meeting is adjourned.